I'm a little late with my Should You Pull Luartha video, but hopefully you'll still find it useful. Maybe it will be the vindication of whether you made the right decision, whether that was to pull or to skip her. Either way, it will be right on time when her banner eventually returns. Before we get into the video, I need a couple of favors from you folks. First of all, let me know if you like the Final Fantasy XI background, the active background that they gave us here. I'm using it as my background for the video because I think it's really cool. And the second favor is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, all of that good stuff. It helps me out quite a bit and I appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about Luartha's gameplay style. She's a 90 cost wind unit with a new job, Trick Lancer. That means that she uses pierce the damage, she uses spears. She is a damage dealer and a pretty strong one. She's going to use critical hits in order to deal massive amounts of damage. She has a good combination of defense penetration, breaks, and perils, and some barrier breaking as well to make sure that her damage gets in. And she is mostly short range. However, she has one mega awesome javelin throw with a 50% base chance to immobilize on a critical hit. It has a very far range, 6 total, which is crazy when you upgrade it. So that's a pretty big hallmark of her kit. And then otherwise, she's got solid HP and she has also solid missile and pierce resistances to build from. Luartha's TMR, the Sacred Dress, will provide some HP, defense, and crit rate, and she wants that crit rate, let me tell ya. It also has an active ability which increases your wind attack and agility by 25% for all allies that it hits. This is a 2-cast ability and it's very solid for mixed damage wind teams. It's also just important for Luartha to have some sort of a TMR with an ability because she only really has one TP skill. She has other TP skills in her sub-jobs, but they all overlap, so she needs some help in that department. Let's talk about stats, and Luartha has 502 attack. That's 25th in the game. However, she has self-sacrifice, which will increase it by a whopping 255 points, which is quite a bit. She also has the TP skill that gives 40% attack to herself and allies, and because it's her skill, she's going to be using that a lot, which means she's going to be sitting at a pretty high attack stat. Her HP is 23rd in the game, which is pretty good for a close-range attacker, and she has high agility at 68. And then finally, her dexterity is 281, which is 14th in the game. It's not at a gunner or ranger level, but it's up there. It's definitely very high dexterity. If we want to talk about level 115 versus 120, Luartha is going to get 59 attack and 3 agility for the trouble of going to 120, which is significant because her base attack goes up as well, and even though that won't increase like crazy values, that's still giving you more attack, and then it means that self-sacrifice also gives you 17 more attack when you equip it, so overall things start to add up, and that's something that you want to see. The 3 agility is also significant. Anytime we get agility, that's a big deal. And then her level 120 skill, Javelin Fall, is a solid range with an AoE and a defense break. It's definitely worth getting. It's something that adds to her kit quite a bit. In terms of survivability, Luartha's resists are all pretty solid aside from her magic resist. However, you might be using self-sacrifice, in which case all the resistances would go down 8%, and then her pierce and missile are particularly strong at 15%, and she can get another 15% missile resist from a TP skill. She doesn't have any defense or spirit innately though, so she doesn't have any barriers or any sort of evasion or anything like that, so she's not going to be some sort of tanky Noctis type or any other unit that we've seen recently that can help themselves survive. She will die, especially if you have self-sacrifice on. Luartha's main trick is that she can deal a bunch of damage, specifically when she is able to hit with a critical hit. So she has plus 33 to crit rate, and that's when you include her Trick Lancer lore passive, and then when you also include that passive, she has 35% increase to critical damage. So whenever she crits, it's going to be 35% modifier on top of that. 10% comes from her mastery ability, and then 25% comes from that Trick Lancer lore. So you definitely want her to crit as much as possible. We have other ways to raise crit damage and crit rate and all sorts of things. So if you have an experienced account, you can probably build around this. If you have a new account, it's probably going to be harder to build around this. She also has 55% innate defense penetration, efficient. So you equip her passives, she has it, you don't have to worry about it, it's just there. And then she has a 30 defense break on Javelin Fall, that's her level 120 skill. And defense breaks are pretty awesome because they can break defense below 0, so you can go to -30 if somebody had, if they had 0 defense. She also has a 38 Pierce and Peril on her LB, which is great. It hits before damage, so her LB is going to be her single strongest attack on her entire kit. That's a really big deal. And then she also has a physical barrier break, so if people are putting up barriers, she's going to be going right through them as long as she's in range to use that skill. On to the fun facts section, and we're mostly going to talk about Binding Javelin. So this skill works like a projectile, it's going to arc over obstacles, and with the passive ability equipped, it has a range of 6. And if you don't have that ability equipped because maybe you want self-sacrifice, then it has a range of 5, which is still pretty good. Assuming no resistances, a 97 Faith Luartha hitting a 97 Faith target will automatically immobilize them, assuming she crits. So that is pretty amazing. Like if you have a mage that you're fighting against, they should have 97 Faith. It means you're always going to be hitting them with immobilize. So it's just always going to happen. If you ping someone with immobilize, they're at the back of the map because you're shooting from so far away, then they're going to be stuck there. They're not going to join the fray. They're not going to get into battle, and that might be the difference between you winning or losing a match. Some other fun facts: Luartha has access to healing power down, that's on Binding Javelin. There's also crit evasion reduction and a counter chance reduction on her kit. Those are all like little things that kind of add to making a better kit, but you know, none of them are like, you know, huge things on their own. Let's talk about Luartha's limit burst, and this one is awesome. She actually steals the limit burst from Winter Luartha, so if you haven't noticed that, go check it out. This is a 200 times modifier, and it has a 38% pierce resistance and parry before damage, and Luartha doesn't actually have any 200 times mods on her main kit. So if you're just using her main kit, then this is it. This is your strongest attack. She does get higher mods on her sub jobs, but we'll talk more about that later. It also has a height range of 2, which is very solid. But the one thing about this LB is that the AP cost is steep. It's 49. That's a lot. We've had a lot of Pierce attackers released recently, including Victoria getting her EX jobs, but we're going to talk about Aranea, and we're also going to talk about Oberon. And I think that Luartha is not going to be as strong as Aranea. I don't think she has as much utility or nearly as many things that she can do to your opponent to deal damage to them, the potencies, etc., all that kind of stuff. She's going to be harder to build for in terms of equipment and building a party around her than Aranea is. I think Aranea is just a bomb. If you put her in a team, she's going to wreck, and then if you put her in an ice team, she's really going to wreck. I do think that Luartha is stronger than Oberon, but Oberon has way more utility. He's way easier to build for, and again, you can put him into rainbow comps, so you can put him into earth teams quite easily. He's just easier to use overall, and like he's a better unit overall, but I think Luartha is going to deal just straight more damage than him, especially with her limit burst specifically, and maybe, you know, if she can land some of her jumps. Let's talk about pros and cons for Luartha. She should be capable of a very high damage output, and at the end of the day, like that's what she's supposed to do, so that's huge. That's a big deal. She has Binding Javelin. It's very cool. It's the Mobilize is a game changer with that kind of range, and then also that proc chance, that 50% base chance is a really big deal. The high dex and luck also does help her accuracy. She's a wind unit, hopefully attacking some earth parties with some evasion units. She wants to be able to hit them, and she doesn't have a 100% hit attack, so hopefully that high dex and luck do help with those as well. And she can easily work like Victoria, where, you know, you can disable her attack buff that's a team buff, and then she'll just go full steam ahead, and she doesn't need a specific TMR to keep her back, because if you want her to stay back, you turn on her TP skill that does give you that team buff, and then you could still have bells on and not worry about her getting lost or you know, going too far ahead. So I like that you have both of those options very easily accessible to you. And then the cons, well, you know, Luartha is going to need bells or some sort of AP refresh because her TP skills are very limited, or they all overlap. If you want to have a good TMR ability, well, then she's going to have a really hard time generating AP. You really do want to have bells, which rules out her own TMR, unfortunately. And then if you want to get access to 200 times modifiers or higher modifiers, then you have to go to her sub jobs. Now, of course, she has her limit burst, but Soldier is going to give you some pretty high mods. However, you you can't use the pierce attack bonus on those that you will be getting from your TP skill, from things like your weapons, etc., from espers. And then if you want to go over to Dragoon to get access to those high modifiers, well, again, you're going to have that pierce modifier that will help you out, but you're not going to have access to any cast time reductions, and that could affect whether she even uses her jumps or not, depending on how fast the units are that you're attacking. And then aside from good resistances and decent HP, we've got no damage mitigation or defense or spirit or anything like that. So I still think, you know, without those extra bonuses, then you just can't really survive against the heavy hitters in this game. So she's not really going to be, you know, a very survivable unit. She's not going to be someone like Noctis or someone like even like Helena, who just gets the TMR barrier that can make her survive one hit. And then aside from Binding Javelin, she does have low mobility and range, and that's something you have to keep in mind as well. Let's talk about the Winter VC that they released. Now this is definitely made for Luartha. When we look at the bestowed ability, the accuracy is going to help her compete against evasion. She's going to need to hit Zazans and Katones and Frederikas in order to flex her elemental advantage. So you definitely want that accuracy. And when you take a look at the stats, the AP is also very important for her as well. So there's a reason why they put that AP on the card. The vision ability is also pretty cool. It gives Luartha an extra application in PvE as a chainer, but it also is going to enable her critical hits because it has that critical evasion down. Now you could also put this onto any spear user that doesn't have a barrier break. Now that's assuming that you're probably going to be using it on a wind team, and maybe it's a lancer or somebody that's not wind, but they're giving the buffs to their party. I don't know. It's still cool to have for, you know, even again for PvE, for chaining. Then the party ability, 50% attacks, very strong. The crit rate is big for Luartha, and the 25% HP could be the difference between surviving an attack or not. Now, if you pair it with Droom's also going to love that 25% HP as a tank, so it's definitely a very cool party ability. I think if you really want Luartha to work, then this VC is going to help a lot. However, I do think that you could use other VCs just fine, and she's going to still put in work for your team, so I don't think that you need to pull this VC necessarily. However, if Luartha is like your main unit and you want, or you know, if you want to do Rainbow Luartha where you're sticking her in a team as like a solo unit, then this VC is going to be really powerful for her as a standalone set. Do not pull this VC for the other holiday units. It's not worth it for them. All right, let's get to the question, which is, should you pull? And I think, you know, I think Luartha is a very strong unit. I think she's going to be a fun addition to people's accounts. I personally think, given the limited units that are coming up and just the units in general that are, you know, very strong that we just had, I don't think that Winter Luartha is going to be worth your Visior. I don't think that most players should get her. I think most players should actually skip her. Now, at the end of the day, it's up to you to make your own decision, and that doesn't mean that she's bad. I'm sure I'm going to get my ass kicked by plenty of Luarthas in the future. I just don't think she does enough to really, you know, warrant your Visior, especially if you're free to play and, you know, you're saving for that important unit that's going to help you stay in the game and be competitive. I don't think it's her, so I'm going to go ahead and recommend that you skip this unit. Now, Banner's been out for a week, so a bunch of you have probably already pulled her, and you're like, hey, Mysidia, I'm going to disagree with you because I already pulled her and I need to be right. I'm sorry. I think you're wrong. But if you didn't pull her, you're feeling pretty good right now because Mysidia just said, hey, you did the right thing. So that's pretty neat. Well, that's going to be it for this video, and it was a fun one to make. I'm so glad to be back in the content creation zone. I had to, you know, wait till my break hit here because I'm getting pretty busy at work, but hopefully I'm going to be having more videos coming for you soon, and maybe even some streams. So look forward to that. Let me know what you want to see in the comments, and I'll be sure to work on that. And then otherwise, make sure you hop on the Discord so we can chat about War of the Visions or FFBE or any other game that you want. I'm on there all the time. We'll see you there, and we'll see you in the next video.